So the other day, I made a tweet regarding The Dark Knight Returns, Batman v Superman, and Zack Snyder. Now, before I get into the video, I want everybody to understand that I'm actually a defender of Batman v Superman. I quite enjoy the movie and defend it, whereas most other comic book fans just shit on it. I actually really enjoy it. I've seen it 7 times in IMAX, actually, not even ashamed to admit that, honestly. But that context is important. Let's get into it. I said the worst part about BVS is that Batman calls in strafing runs on people, because Batman doesn't do that. Please read a comic book besides The Dark Knight Returns, Zack Snyder, LMFAO. I'm only laughing at my own tweet, not because I'm actually funny, but because right after this, of course, the director of The Dark Knight Returns and storyboarder for Batman v Superman, Jay Oliva, chimed in. Jay said, Zack and I have read quite a few comic books other than Dark Knight Returns. I happen to like The Dark Knight Returns. What's wrong with it? Mark Hughes responded, I have a lot of comics featuring Batman using guns. I also own copies of every Batman movie, and he kills people in every single film except Batman and Robin in the old 1966 movie. If folks don't prefer Batman killing, that's fine, but claiming it's unfaithful or not Batman is false. So first of all, a lot of people were commenting right away that Jay Oliva destroyed me, he slaughtered me, whatever, and owned me. And I'm just thinking, I really don't view it that way. And I'm not even trying to be biased because I don't want to be the one getting shit on. I'm sure there's some truth to that. Of course, nobody likes to be laughed at and mocked or whatever. Not saying that I have been, but I obviously would be in the interest of defending myself. But even putting my own biases aside, I really just said my opinion. My least favorite part about BVS is that Batman calls in strafing runs on people. And I find Mark Hughes' comment also to neglect the fact that, yes, in the past we have seen Batman with high level of contemplation consider killing somebody, but there's always that level of contemplation of, oh, am I going to do it? Am I not? And in many other iterations of the character, particularly those made after the 1980s with Batman the Animated Series, Batman Arkham, the 90s Chuck Dixon comics, which are considered the golden age of Batman comics, the New 52, Batman does not kill. It's explicitly stated that he does not. Additionally, in 1941, as one of my followers pointed out, the new editor of DC Comics actually clearly noted that Batman does not kill. So a lot of the images that you will see of people online, particularly from Jay Oliva, as he posted, are from 1939 and 1941, 1940, the first 2 years of the character. Now, of course, the character was completely different back in 1939. My question is there anybody alive who actually remembers that Batman? No, so it's only used as a bargaining token by people who want to justify Batman killing. Going back to 1939 and 1940, the character was completely different. That is not the character that anybody knows and loves today. The other argument posited here by Mark Hughes is also easily debunked because he's saying, well, Batman kills in every single Batman film. As if that matters or means anything. When Chris Nolan is making a Batman movie, he's intentionally throwing out the comic books. He's intentionally throwing out the video games and other movies and everything. He's throwing everything out the door, and he's explicitly and intentionally stated that his goal is to make a Chris Nolan movie that happens to have Batman in it. And that's something that Iragen pointed out in our most recent episode of our podcast, the Anonymous Throwdown podcast, that indeed, every prior Batman director is actually making their own style of movie. Chris Nolan is making a Chris Nolan movie, and the other directors are basically making movies that are stylistically aligned with other movies they have made, and they just so happen to have Batman in them. So in other words, what would a Chris Nolan movie look like with Batman in it? Well, it would look like a Batman that is grounded in reality and in a hyper-realistic world, and would involve terrorism and gangs and mobs as opposed to zany comic book superheroes and villains. And that is exactly what The Dark Knight was. So by no means are we basing The Dark Knight Returns or Batman 1989 or Batman 1966 as necessarily the golden children of who Batman is. We have to look at the overall body of work. And in the overall body work of who Batman is as a character from across video games, across the animated series, across comic books post-1941, across animated movies, and across canon stories. It's important to acknowledge as well, not to be too nerdy here, but The Dark Knight Returns is an out-of-canon book. There are comics, Batman comics in particular, for instance, The Killing Joke of 1988. When that was released, it was so prolific and so influential that it was actually added to the canon, and that is a level of Batman killing that I am perfectly okay with and has precedent in the canon. The Killing Joke, the ending, is ambiguous as to whether or not Batman killed the Joker, and throughout the entire story, he is heavily considering killing the character. And I think that is completely fine. There's no part of me that is like, well, I just want to live in this PG fantasy land of the animated series where Batman doesn't kill. It's not like that. I just have deeply rooted beliefs and opinions about the character's origin and the propensity to which that influences his ability to kill. Because of his upbringing and his childhood and the way in which his parents were killed in cold blood, he doesn't want to turn that fear and anger in that moment against other people and take a life. It's an eye for an eye, and that's not really what Batman believes. He believes in a higher form of justice. And I think putting aside your own political beliefs or what you feel about capital punishment and this and that, that's really an aside from whether or not you feel Batman as a character should or should not kill. And I find it odd that people are eager to nitpick these rare examples. Again, comic books from 1939 that nobody alive has ever read. Movies that are not canon. The Dark Knight Returns is not a canon book, and it's not canon for a reason. Since 1941, the editors of DC Comics are not keen with having Batman kill unless we're talking about, again, a Flashpoint situation. We're talking about an end of canon story like The Dark Knight Returns. If we are looking at the canon body of work between the comics, the animated series, again, the Batman Arkham games, that's another common misconception, is people will throw out images and videos of Batman killing in the Arkham games. And in every instance, they are design glitches. You will notice that if you drop a thug off of a height that is too high, yes, of course, they couldn't survive that. If you drop somebody off of Wonder Tower, they're going to die. But that doesn't mean that Rocksteady intended for Batman to kill in the game. In fact, at the end of Batman Arkham City, Batman tells the Joker that even after everything he's done across Batman Arkham Asylum and Batman Arkham City, he still would not have, he still would have saved him. And that's exactly what Batman reveals to the Joker at the end of Arkham City. So in the Batman Arkham games, Batman does not kill at all. If you watch Batman Mask of the Phantasm, one of the most iconic movies ever made, most iconic Batman movies ever made, basically the Phantasm is killing people in graveyards and he's just going around and murking people. And he's the main villain of the story. And the press start going to Jim Gordon in the film and they say, hey, Batman, your ally that you're teaming up with is killing people. How do you feel about that? He's not giving them a trial. He's just murdering them. And Jim Gordon says to the press, he says, I know for a fact that's not Batman because Batman doesn't kill. So I know for a fact that whoever is killing people out on the streets, it is not Batman. No matter how much he looks like Batman and resembles Batman, it's not him. How impactful is that to know that Jim Gordon and other characters in the Batman universe have that level of trust within him? That certainly doesn't exist in the BVS universe. If there are any reports that Batman did anything bad or is a terrible person or force for Gotham, Jim Gordon would be like, yeah, he kind of is. He calls in bombing runs on people like we're in a goddamn war zone. I mean, he literally is calling in strafing runs like he's in the fucking Air Force in a war zone. There is no comic books where you can find Batman doing that. Not even The Dark Knight Returns. Go back and read it. There is no instance in which Batman does that. And Jay Oliva is just making up that this is something that is precedent in the canon for the film that he storyboarded. There is no precedent for what Batman is doing here. There's not even a precedent for the Punisher doing this. Okay? You might find a rare incidence of the Punisher using a tank or something. But literally calling in strafing runs on people and people like, just suck it up, bro. That's the character, bro. And I just want people to understand that there is a reason that people feel the way that I do. And to disregard that or pretend like I'm being some crybaby sheltered kid that only wants to see PG entertainment is totally absurd. I have a reason for wanting what I want out of the character. And frankly, again, I wasn't born in the 1920s, so I haven't read the comics from 1939. But the character that I grew up with and the character that I love is Batman from the Batman Arkham games, Batman from the Chuck Dixon comics in the 1990s, Batman from the animated series movies, Batman from the animated series films like Mask of the Phantasm, and also the New 52 animated movies by Jay Oliva, where also Batman doesn't kill, by the way. But he seems to totally disregard that and only focus again on The Dark Knight Returns, which is exactly my point in the tweet, is that Batman's portrayal in Batman v Superman is not Batman ripped straight off the comic books because he drew from the exception rather than the rule. He drew from the Batman that is not the rule or what Batman tends to act like, but he rather pulled him from a story that is an exception to the rule. That's exactly why it's not in canon. That's why The Dark Knight Returns is not in any list of DC canon. It is totally Elseworld. because of what Batman does in the story. And by the way, it's disputed whether or not he even kills in the story. I just read it recently, and every instance in which you point out, oh, maybe he killed here, it's debatable, right? But with all that being said, Zack Snyder's justification for Batman killing is even more absurd, and I'll end on this note.
It's a sort of slight potential spoiler of sorts, but I want to know why you decided to allow Batman to kill within this picture.
I tried to do it in that sort of technical way, right? There's a great YouTube video that shows all the kills in the Christopher Nolan movies, even though like we would perceive them as movies where he doesn't kill anyone. I think there's like 42 potential kills that the Batman does, and it includes also it goes back and includes even the Tim Burton Batman movies where this reputation as a guy that doesn't kill comes from. So I tried to do it like by proxy. He'd shoot the car that they're in, the car would blow up, or the grenade would go off in the guy's hand or whatever, or he'd shoot the tank of the thing, and the guy pretty much lights his own tank with the thing. So I perceive it as not him killing directly, but by sort of, if the bad guys are associated with the thing that happens to blow up, that's not really. He would say that that's not really my problem. Like they shouldn't have been around that. Sort of machine gun. What's that?
It's like manslaughter.
Yeah, a little more like manslaughter than actual murder.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm watching this in editing. What the fuck? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me, Zack Snyder? That is the dumbest argument I've ever heard in my entire life. The dumbest. So you happen to be standing by the car that the strafing run is called in on, and therefore the bullets hit the gas canister in the car, and then the car blows up and you're dead, but it's not Batman's fault. It's somehow your fault because you're associated with the car getting blown. Like, what? This is the most asinine argument I've ever heard. Okay, now I'll let pre-editing me discuss. He says that Batman doesn't kill in his movie. He says that Batman commits involuntary manslaughter. Oh, interesting. So Batman calls in a strafing run, shoots a gas canister, the gas canister blows up and then kills somebody. So when he blows up a car and the car blows up, you see, he didn't actually blow up the car. The bullets blew up the car, and that's involuntary manslaughter. That's third-degree murder. That's not as bad. As if we're not watching on your screen right now, Batman just murking people. It's unbelievable. And again, you can say, oh, Batman kills. Okay, Batman kills on a selective one-off basis in comics from 1940. Okay, I'll give you that. But is he calling in strafing runs on people? No. You just made that up. You just made that up and invented that Batman has ever done that. Again, besides in other movies. But our point is we want movies that are accurate to something that we actually know from the character. We want movies that are accurate to the comics and exist and somewhat resemble the character from the comics. Now, I would say Zack Snyder got closer than anybody else. I would say that BVS is a great movie. I would say that BVS is a masterpiece in regards to cinematography and film score. And I would say that it's one of the most impactful and important comic movies ever made. I would say that it made history. But when I say that the Batman portrayed in the film is ripped straight off of the comic books, ripped straight out of the animated series, straight out of the Arkham games, if we're looking at mainstream portrayals of Batman that are closest to who Batman actually is as a character, you're looking at Batman Arkham 100%. It is the best mainstream media portrayal of the character outside of the comics. Otherwise, again, you can nitpick examples of stories that are out of the canon. You can nitpick comics from 1939 before our grandparents were even born. But besides that, Batman doesn't kill. And it just is what it is. You have to get over it. I'm sorry.